Hello, everyone. My name is Niall Ferguson, the Milbank Family Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Hoover Capital Conversations. Capital Conversations is an ongoing series featuring discussions between those who generate the ideas that enable a free society and those who turn them into actionable policy. We invite you to listen and participate in discussions between our issue experts and policymakers as they consider solutions to some of our most challenging problems. Today, we're fortunate to be talking to Senator Rick Scott. As part of the discussion, we'll be taking audience questions and encourage you to submit yours at the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. Okay, let's get started. Senator Scott needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one. He was elected to the US Senate representing Florida in 2018. Prior to his election to the Senate, he served 2 terms as the 45th governor of Florida. Having studied law and served in the Navy, he had a successful career in private healthcare and venture capital before going into politics. As governor, he presided over a boom in Florida that created nearly 1.5 million jobs. He currently serves on 5 Senate committees: Homeland Security, Armed Services, Commerce, Science and Transportation, Budget, and the Special Committee on Aging, and he's chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Welcome, Senator Scott.
You know, it's great to be with you. What you should be excited about is Bernie Sanders is the chair of the Budget Committee. So you know we're heading in the right direction, right?
Well, we'll get to that in just a moment because I do want to talk about fiscal issues. But I thought it might be good to begin by talking about disasters, because as governor of Florida, you had to contend with Hurricane Irma. I think that was 2017. And it gave you, I think, a taste of what it is to handle a disaster. Let me ask first, what did you learn from that experience?
You know, it's interesting. My business background, I ran a variety of companies, and in 1992 we had Hurricane Andrew, and I was running a hospital company, and our biggest market was Miami. So we had one hospital completely demolished. We evacuated 2 hospitals, and then while I was governor, we had 4 major hurricanes. We had a healthcare crisis. What I've learned in all those: show up, give people all the information you can, and really you should feel comfortable that people will do the right thing. I mean, they want to take care of each other. They will, if you give them good information, they'll actually make really good decisions. You don't need to, government doesn't need to mandate everything to you. And those 4 major hurricanes, and Irma was bigger than our entire state. I never mandated anybody leave their homes. Yeah, over 6 million people left their homes to get to shelters. We had open over 700 shelters. We didn't say, oh, you got to get out of you're mandated to get out of your house. No, we never did. We said, this is what's happening. We constantly told people. We said, this is what we can do to help you. And by the way, if you decide to stay, you have to realize no one can help you for a period of time until after the storm passes. So we just inform people. And people make good decisions. And that's what I believe about government. Government should be there to provide you information, good information, consistent information, accurate information, and then allow you to make good decisions.
Listening to you, I'm thinking that doesn't sound like a great description of the US response to COVID-19. Looking back, and of course, it's not over, so we shouldn't be premature, but looking back at last year, what would you say went wrong, and what could the United States have done better with that national, indeed global disaster?
Well, the biggest thing that went right was we got the vaccine. Operation Warp Speed worked. We got a vaccine out quickly. And then, you know, everybody worked to make sure that it got out to people. So that's what I think they did really well. I think what they could have done better at every level of government is give people better information. To this day, think about it. So I'm O positive blood type, right? I should have a pretty good idea by now. Do I have a better chance of getting COVID with my blood type or less? I mean, to this day, we don't know. I mean, there's so many things that by now, with the number of people that have tested positive for COVID, we ought to have pretty good information. but we still don't have any of that information. So I think what the government should have done at every level is give us better information. You don't have to tell us how to lead our lives. We will try to be safe. I got a lot of goals for myself. My family wants to do things, so I plan on being around. So give me good information. I'll make good decisions. I think Americans will do that.
Let me look ahead now. The next big disaster, we're told almost every day of the week, is going to arise from climate change. And I certainly accept that there are all kinds of adverse scenarios that could arise from greenhouse gas emissions. I don't dismiss that threat. But are there other things we should be worrying about? Because I sometimes feel as if we're expected to worry only about that. And we were perhaps focusing only on that back in January 2020 when a pandemic was beginning. What other things, when you look ahead, should we be concerned about?
Well, I think right now we've got a crisis on our border. In March, 177,000 people, I think it was apprehended. We don't know how many people weren't apprehended. We have over 25,000 children in custody. That's clearly a crisis. And in many places around the country, we still don't have our schools open. That's a crisis, especially for our poorest families that don't have the financial wherewithal to get their children into a private school. We've got an unbelievable debt crisis. We're going to hit $30 trillion worth of debt pretty quickly here with no plan. There's no plan to control the amount of debt we have. I mean, think about it. We've gone from about $6 trillion worth of debt, which we thought was high 20 years ago, to $30 trillion. There's no plan at the Federal Reserve to deal with it. There's no plan with Secretary Yellen to deal with it. There's no plan. We're seeing inflation. You look at gasoline prices. I think they're up over 70 cents a gallon since November 3rd. Food prices are up. Household good prices are up. So it looks like, I hope it's not true, it looks like we're going to have a significant problem with inflation. It's very hard to control inflation once it starts. So I think those are some of the big things. And then the other crisis we've got is Communist China. I mean, they are absolutely committed. They're committed to take away our way of life. They want to dominate the world. They don't believe in freedom. We'll ask the people in Hong Kong if they believe in freedom. They don't. So I think we've got to understand Communist China is trying to build a military to defeat us. They don't believe in any of our values. They want to control the entire economy and how everybody deals with each other all over the world. They want to be the dominant power to tell everybody how to lead their lives.
I want to get to those foreign policy and domestic policy challenges in just a moment. I just want to throw in one kind of political question before we go on to that. Some people would say that for the Republican Party, January was a disaster. Yeah, maybe one could go all the way back and say November was a disaster. The presidency was lost. Control of the Senate was lost. There was a riot at the Capitol, and you were one of those who voted against certifying Pennsylvania's electoral college vote. Are we in a position to see a recovery from that sequence of events? And if so, how do you envisage political recovery for the Republican Party?
Oh, I'm very optimistic. First off, think about it. Take the Congress. First off, everybody said that Congress was going to lose 15 seats, and the Republican House picked up, I think, 15 seats. In the Senate, the projection was we'd be down to 48, 47 Republican senators. We're at 50. We should have been higher. We unfortunately lost the presidency. But if you look at right now, I'm the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. We're outraising the Democrat Senatorial Committee for the first quarter. We're doing really way better than anybody thought we would. There's great people showing up to run. And the reason is they see that the Biden agenda is not a good agenda for the country. Americans don't want an open border, closed schools. They don't want men to play in women's sports. They don't want to kill the Keystone Pipeline. They don't want to become energy dependent on the Middle East again. And they don't want elections that are not secure. So what the Biden agenda is, and the Americans are worried about the debt and inflation. So I mean, there was a poll that came out just this week, I think, said that 87% of Americans are worried about inflation. So we're going to do really well in 22. Unfortunately, we're going to have to fight off a lot of bad Biden policies in the meantime.
Looking back, I mean, do you think, given all that went wrong last year, that ultimately Donald Trump deserved to lose the presidency?
Well, I've had one primary election and 3 general elections, and basically the election comes down to 2 people, and you've got to convince people that you can do a better job and you care more about them than the other person. Unfortunately, Joe Biden won the election. But if you look around the country, we did well with governor's races. We did well with state house and senate races. In my home state of Florida, we have now 78 out of 120 House members are Republican. 24 out of 40 senators are Republican. So I think if you look around the country, Republicans did well. So unfortunately, we lost the presidency. So we have to fight to make sure we tell people what the Republican Party stands for. We are the party of opportunity. I make it real simple. I'm a kid that grew up in public housing. I never met my dad. I had a tough as nails mom that told me, you're going to go to church all the time. You're going to make straight A's. You're going to be an Eagle Scout and get out of the house and make some money. It was a great upbringing because she said, I live in this country. I can be anything. So that's what I want. I want this country to have everybody in this country have the same opportunity. That's what the Republican Party stands for. The idea that any one of us can be anything. And that's what the Republican Party is. And that's why we're going to win in 22 and take the presidency back in 24.
So while it's become very popular, certainly in the mainstream media, to beat up on Donald Trump, there's no denying that he oversaw a drastic change in our foreign policy, and in particular towards China. And it's very striking to me that the new administration appears to be continuing that policy in most of its essentials. So let's talk a little bit about that fundamental shift away from essentially acquiescing in China's rise to trying to do something about it. You mentioned earlier, and I think many of us at the Hoover Institution would agree, that China poses a fundamental threat to the idea of freedom around the world and a threat to US national security and the security of US allies. So what exactly should we be doing about that as a nation? And do you think the Biden administration is doing the right things?
Well, I think the Biden administration is not aggressive enough. Number one, every American should do everything it can to buy American products, but never, never, never buy anything produced in communist China. Never. You should say to yourself, I'm not going to do it because they steal our jobs. I'm not going to do it because they steal our technology. I'm not going to do it because they put 1 million people into prison for their religion. I'm not going to do it because they harvest organs. I'm not going to do it because they took away the basic rights of Hong Kong citizens. I'm not going to do it because they're threatening Taiwan right now. So what we've got to understand is, as we buy Chinese products, we're helping them build their economy, and they're taking that money to try to ultimately dominate us. And so I think the Biden administration has to be more clear that what they're doing with the Uyghurs, stealing technology, all these things, Hong Kong, is horrible. Be vocal about it every day. What I try to do in my job is every day let people know that communist China is not our friend. They are not our friend. So we've got to fight that every day. We've got to make sure to tell people the Ayatollah. I mean, look at just what happened this week, where one of our destroyers had to stop an attack by some Iranian boats. I mean, we've got to understand we can't go back into the Iran deal. We've got to hold the Castro regime accountable in Cuba. We've got to help get freedom and liberty in Venezuela. We got to fight for what we cherish. We got to do everything we can to fight for those things in other countries. If we don't, then what's going to happen? We'll have fewer people that want to live the way we live, and we'll have less opportunity for all Americans.
Let me turn now to some of the domestic policy issues that you as a senator are grappling with. Now, you've already mentioned the crisis on the southern border and the sudden increase in the number of people crossing that border illegally. What should we do about that problem broadly? And maybe second question, is there ever going to be a reform of our immigration system? It feels like it's been tried and it's failed more than once. And yet there's a kind of consensus that something needs to be reformed. So what should we do, and can there be reform of our legislation?
Well, I'm hopeful that we can do two things, and you basically can't do one without the other. Okay, we need to have a secure border. We need to know who's coming across the border. That's number one. Number two is we have to have an immigration system that people are, people come to this country and live this dream. I'm from an immigration state. Think of how many people are in Florida today that grew up in other countries. A lot of it Latin America, but some of it Eastern Europe, some of it from all over the world. And they want to live here to live our dream. So let's make sure we have an immigration system that we get the right people to come in that want to live our dream, don't want to change our system to a socialist system. But it takes you got to secure the border. I did a tour with Governor Ducey from Arizona now about 5 weeks ago, and it was so frustrating. We put the money up under the Trump administration to build the wall along there. The wall would be up, but there'd be these nice openings for people to walk through. Those were the gates that were supposed to go up, and Joe Biden decided not to put them up. Or we saw all these really nice lights and cameras that were put up so Border Patrol could watch. So they would not have to be at every place along the border. Well, they just didn't turn on the electricity. And then there was the roads along the fence so Border Patrol could get out there if somebody was illegally crossing. I mean, and they were letting it wash away. So secure the border, and then do everything you can to improve the immigration system. We need to take care of the DACA kids right now. There's no reason to wait. I mean, they didn't come here and intentionally violate the law. They were brought here by somebody else, by their parents or another family member. So as long as they're living our dream, they ought to, have the same rights that we all have to be here. I had a bill to fix the temporary protective status. That's a program to when you have an earthquake in another country, and some people here, like what happened in Haiti. I said, let's fix the system so it actually works, because right now the system doesn't work. Every Republican signed on and agreed that we would give temporary protective status to the Venezuelans that are here because of Maduro. I couldn't get in, the Democrats blocked it. Not one Democrat would help me. And so it seems like up here, there's not interest in getting something done. I mean, Joe Biden's not doing anything to get anything done with regard to immigration reform, and the Democrats don't. They talk about it. They talk about like they like to do things, but it's all talk. There's no action.
Do you favor shifting to a point system, something along the lines that other countries have to try to assess applicants for residency and citizenship according to their economic capabilities?
Well, I think we ought to say to ourselves, we want immigration. Actually, I believe we need immigration as continue to grow our country. But you got to do it with people that want to live our dream, want to come here and work hard and believe in the American system. Don't want to change us into a socialist country.
I want to talk about two more things before we go to the Q&A, which we'll do in just 5 minutes' time. One is education, and the other is economics. So one of the things that is very striking about the United States today is that the educational institutions, from the elite universities right down to public schools in states like California, seem to be in the grip of an ideology that is profoundly illiberal and in many ways inimical to the American values on which this republic was founded. This is the so-called woke movement. Do you or anybody in the Republican Party have an answer to this problem, which appears to have become a really rather insuperable one from universities to public schools?
Sure. Do what I did in Florida. First off, Give as much as you can do. Give the parents the money and let them choose the school they want to go to. Parents really care about their kids. I always thought there was three things my responsibility as governor was: make sure people can get a good education, make sure their kids can get a great job, or one, a good job, number two, a good education, and number three, keep them safe in safe communities. So if you gave the parents the money, the tax dollars that we're spending on K-12 education, they're going to make pretty good choices. On top of that, what I did with the university system is I changed the system to say, I'm going to pay based on three things. What's it cost to get a degree? Do you get a job? How much money do you make? And you get to focus on what the focus was when I went to school. I had the GI Bill because I'd served in the Navy when I went to school. But I had to figure out, it didn't just pay for everything. I got a set amount a month. I was working full time. My wife was working full time. And we said, okay, what's this going to cost us? Do we get a better job? And so we were focused on how we did that. And these schools have lost sight of what their job is. Their job is to prepare people for a job. I don't want these kids to end up with any debt. I didn't end up with any debt when I finished school because I worked and I had the GI Bill and I watched what the cost was. Cost has just skyrocketed. So when I left 2 years ago as governor of Florida, our higher education system was #1 in the United States, according to the U.S. News and World Report. Is because I got them focused on what people cared about. What's it cost? Do you get a job? How much money do you make when you finish?
So let me turn now to the final set of questions, which really relate to the economy. You mentioned already concern about inflation amongst the public is growing. We have had a succession of multi-trillion dollar spending bills, and we're not yet done, it seems. There is the loosest monetary policy in the history of the Federal Reserve, and now talk of higher taxation, corporate income, and capital gains. So how concerned are you personally about the inflation risk, and more generally about the risks that this is going to, taken together, amount to a major body blow to an economy that was looking very strong indeed just prior to the pandemic?
I think we're headed towards a very difficult time. Just look at what the Federal Reserve's done, grown their balance sheet. It's now up to almost $8 trillion. And when I talked to Jay Powell, he's talking about adding another $1 trillion+ to their balance sheet. Why? Why are they still today buying U.S. Treasuries? U.S. Treasuries are supposed to be the most secure investment in the world. Why does our Federal Reserve have to keep buying them up every month? This growth in the money supply, it has always historically ended up in inflation. This unbelievable government spending, and just think about it. We had this so-called COVID bill this year, $1.9 trillion, less than 10% actually had anything to do with COVID. Now they're talking about the so-called infrastructure bill, has very little to do with infrastructure, that's over $2 trillion. And now tonight, Joe Biden's going to talk about another almost $2 trillion bill. We're already running deficits. We were running deficits before COVID hit a year ago. Our deficit was still going to be over $1 trillion. We have got to live within our means. I'm fighting right now to make sure that we stop raising this debt ceiling every year. Let's make the tough choices to figure out how to live within our means. If we don't, here's who gets hurt. Families like mine growing up. When gasoline prices gas goes up, but 70 cents a gallon since November 3rd. The rich are going to be fine. If they raise it $1, who cares? But the poor, it's a bigger portion of their income. Food prices are up 3.6% according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. It seems to me they're up higher than that. Housing prices, look what's happened to housing prices. So how do you get started anymore in this country? And so we're hurting the families that are struggling to make ends meet, families that are struggling to get ahead, families like mine growing up. My mom said I could be anything. Well, gosh, if you can't, if your wages never stay up with inflation, it's very difficult to do it. So I'm very concerned about the debt. I'm very concerned about the inflation. And I'm most concerned is that Joe Biden doesn't care. He will not lift a finger to deal with all these crises right now.
If you're just joining us, I'm Hoover Senior Fellow Niall Ferguson, and this is Hoover's Capital Conversations with Senator Rick Scott. We'll take some questions now, and just a reminder, you can submit yours at the Q&A button at the top of your screen. If you have a question, go right ahead and do that. We have a few already, I am glad to say, and the first one I'm going to go to is from William, who asks, what should we do if China takes actions against Taiwan? What actions could we take if they actually act against Taiwan? And I guess act against could mean anything from outright invasion to a blockade. Now, you're an ex-Navy guy, so this is in your ballpark. Yeah, let's just talk scenarios here. I hear some pretty scary ones. And if you want to get real scared, read Jim Stavridis's new novel, Imagining Full-Blown War. So yeah, what could they do and what would we do in return?
Well, the biggest thing what America has to do is we've got to have a strong military. We've got to be absolutely clear with what our goals are. And if we're strong, we will stop people from doing foolish things. When you're weak, that's when people, like other countries, make bad decisions. When you're not clear, that's when countries make bad decisions. So what we've got to do is unfortunately, because of what Communist China is doing, what Russia is doing, what the Ayatollah in Iran's doing, we have to continue to invest significant dollars on our military. So we're the most lethal military in the world that no one even wants to think about ever confronting us. If we don't do that, we're going to be confronted. That's step one. Step two is with Taiwan, we've got to be absolutely clear. I've got a bill called the Taiwan Invasion Protection Act. And I don't want to be ambiguous. There should be no ambiguity. We will, no question about it, we will defend an invasion by Communist China of Taiwan. Now, we're not saying that Taiwan has to go take any action to say they're going to be, they're clearly independent. That's a choice they get to make. But they're a thriving democracy right now, and we've got to make it clear that we will support them. Now, part of that is making sure we work well with Taiwan, work well with South Korea, work well with Japan, work well with India. We've got to make sure that as Communist China is trying to figure out how their next step after taking away all the basic rights of the Hong Kong citizens, all right, we've got to say who should be on our side. Those countries, clearly Indonesia, all these countries, they do not want to be controlled by Communist China. So, but let's be clear-eyed about this. Let's tell them exactly what we're going to do, and let's invest in our military. I'm disappointed in the Biden administration's military proposal for defense spending. I'm going to work hard to make sure we have a strong, efficient, very lethal military.
I have another question here on a COVID topic. It's from Kalanit. Permitting people to make their own decisions regarding seeking shelter in hurricane is different from a mask mandate. The former decision impacts the individual alone, the latter impacts your neighbors. These are qualitatively different. Comments?
I actually trust people. I actually believe people can make it. I think people can make a good decision. But finally, think about it. CDC just took until this week said when we're outside and we've been vaccinated, that you don't have to wear a mask. So I'm very comfortable that people make good decisions. I want to be healthy. My family wants to be healthy. I think we'll make good decisions for ourselves and other people.
Do you take the same view in vaccines? Can I ask?
What I did was I had COVID in November, and so I've been testing that I have the antibodies, but I've already taken the first vaccine, and I'll be taking the second shot, I think, in 2 weeks.
Let's move on while time is still on our side. We only have another 10 minutes of your time because I know you have to go back to your day job and do some voting pretty soon. Here's a question from Chase. What can students do on college campuses to stand against the CCP regime, the Chinese Communist Party regime, and stand for freedom in the US?
I think the biggest thing is inform people. Tell people what's going on. A lot of people don't really know what's happening to the Uyghurs. They don't know what's happening with the harvesting of organs. They don't know about the Chinese espionage, stealing jobs. They're not familiar with the fact that the basic rights of Hong Kong citizens were just taken away from them during the pandemic. Communist China took advantage of what was going on in the world at the time. So I think the biggest thing is tell everybody what's going on, because when you stop and think about the list of things that Communist China is doing, it's disgusting to every American citizen that believes in freedom and liberty. And so when they do that, what will happen is people stop buying Chinese products and they'll start calling China out for what they're doing. I've been calling on everybody to work on getting the Olympics that are supposed to be held in Communist China next year, the Winter Olympics, moved. There's ability to move the Olympics. I've asked the Biden administration for their help. There's about 180 human rights organizations around the world that are very focused on this. The Parliament of Canada has said that they ought to be moved. So if all of us, focus on this and get up in arms about the things that are happening, guess what? Things are going to change. But if we sit here and we think everything's going to work out, I mean, I'm very concerned about these crises that is happening in our country and around the world right now.
Just a quick follow-up on the Olympics. If they don't move and they go ahead in Beijing, would you favor a boycott?
No, I think it's not fair to the students. I mean, to the athletes. I think that the athletes get, they work their tails off. So I don't believe in a boycott. I believe the Olympics are going to get moved. I think what's happening around the world is people are waking up that there is going to be a Winter Olympics. We're getting past the COVID. They're learning more and more every day about the atrocities happening in Communist China. That they're going to get moved.
I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions. Phil asks, could you comment on the big corporations going, as he puts it, full woke? You were a businessman before you entered politics. What do you make of the kind of virtue signaling that we seem to get a lot of from big corporations these days?
I mean, companies like Coke and Delta and Major League Baseball, I mean, they're just cowering to the radical left is all they're doing. And there's going to be a backlash. So, I mean, think about this. When these companies do this and you actually look at what they're doing, they're hypocrites. I mean, look at Coke. Coke says, oh, we need to, do something about the election laws in Georgia, which if you look at the election laws in Georgia, they're trying to make sure you have free and fair elections. That's what they're trying to do. There was no suppression there. There was no racist act there at all. But Coke is okay in Communist China, selling as much Coke as they can. They'll never call out the fact that you don't even have a right to a vote in Communist China. And then Delta said the same thing. And then they fly right into Beijing trying to make as much money as they can. Have never called out them. The worst is Major League Baseball. They played a baseball game in Havana at a stadium stolen at gunpoint by the Castro regime. That's okay where they don't have elections. But gosh, in the United States, where somebody's going to ask you for an ID, these woke CEOs act like that's racist or that's suppression. No, it's not. It's people saying you should have an ID to be able to vote. No one should have their vote diluted. So I think there's going to be an unbelievable backlash against these woke CEOs because they're complete hypocrites.
Let me go back to a question that was posed by Marcel. What impact will the coronavirus have on the US-China relationship? I guess we're all kind of wondering when we're going to get straight answers to the questions about what exactly happened at the outbreak back at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And I'm not yet hearing those answers, despite apparent attempts to investigate by the World Health Organization. What are your thoughts on this, Senator?
We're never going to find out. I mean, the World Health Organization is not going to do their job. the Biden administration, has put no effort into it. I mean, there's nothing that the Biden administration is doing to say we got to get the answers. They went right back in to support the WHO with no. It's what Biden's doing with everything. It's like he wants to be in every country club. He says, "Oh, I want to be part of. I want to get back into Iran." Everything they do, it's not about representing America. But where is the Biden administration on making sure that they are absolutely committed to find out exactly what happened in Wuhan, right? But here's what I think is going to happen with the China relationship. It's over. And here's why. It's not because of what the United States is doing. It's because of the actions of the Communist Party of China. Let's never forget, China is a communist country run by the Communist Party of China for the benefit of the Communist Party of China. Those actions, everybody over time is going to figure out, oh gosh, they are not our friend. How many of us, when the Soviet Union was out as our Cold War adversary, saying, oh, I want to go take a vacation there, or I want to, other than Bernie Sanders, take a vacation there or buy products from them? No, what's going to happen is these because of Communist China's actions, our relationship will decouple because of their actions.
Time for just one last question from me. What are you going to say to those who inevitably will say, you complain about the deficits under President Biden? What about the deficits under President Trump? Isn't it a bit tricky for Republicans to preach fiscal stabilization after 4 years when, let's face it, it really wasn't a priority?
It always has been for me. I paid off a third of the state debt in Florida in my 8 years as governor. The 20 prior years before I was governor, the state debt had increased every year by over $1 billion. Even in years where they had surpluses, they kept borrowing money. I've been talking about the debt and talking about the risk of inflation since I got up here and before. I've been up here a couple of years. In the Republican caucus last week, I led an effort where every Republican senator agreed we will not raise the debt ceiling, which comes up in August, without structural reform to our cost structure. So I'm optimistic that all Republicans are focused on this. I know the country, Americans care about this. Americans, you can't lead your life with just borrowing more money every year. You can't lead your life with spending more than what you take in every year. So neither can government. So I did it as governor. I've been complaining about the federal debt since I got up here, and I'm going to fight to make sure we start living within our means.
Well, I'm afraid that is all we have time for in your busy schedule, Senator Scott. And I want to thank you for your time and for a great conversation, as well as to thank everyone who sent over questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of those. You can learn more about this series at hoover.org/capital conversations online. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us today. And I hope you'll tune back in on May the 26th for a discussion between Kevin Hassett and Senator Jack Reed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Neil.